is residents' concerns. And this is a spot where if a resident has a concern of an item not on the agenda, please feel free to come to the microphone and state your name and where you live. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all to be here today.
Please state your name and your address. Thank you.
My name is Clemar Venâncio, and I stand before you as a member of this wonderful community in Acton. Deep concerns about the issue that affect the communities across the country. Gun violence in school. While Acton hasn't been fortunate not to experience the such tragedies, we cannot sit until by the hope that the minds untouchable. That really is not communities, is immunities to the tragedy of the gun violence of children's savings is at stake, and it's our responsibility to act now before it's too late. Why does petition matter? We all see the devastating news. Shooting in school is innocent life is lost, and the community left to pick up the pieces. This is our longest isolante incidents. They have become more frequent. We cannot wait for some things happen in Acton before you take action. Our children deserve better. They deserve to walk in school without the water, and without the water, the school or savings, and the community has done everything possible to protect them. This petition calls for immediate common sense and the action that will help is saving guarding our school. First one, strengthen school security through the security entrance surveillance and the training persons. Second one, promote gun safety in our homes and the neighborhoods, education, residences, and the importance of the responsibility on the gun ownership. Third one, supporting mental health by ensuring the students in need have access to accessories and counseling. Third one, maintains a strict gun-free zone in school, wise, clear penalty, and strong enforcement. This step was radical. That's we are necessary. No, this step are not radical. That's necessary. There is a step that we are, as a community, can take right now to reduce the risk of the gun violence in our school. Why that's urgent? Our children's safety cannot wait. We can longer assume that this would not happen here. Not one believes is one would happen in many communities where it already has gun violence in school, has become leading in causing deaths for children and teenagers in America. That's the standings we cannot ignore this. We must be protective, not reactive. I know my English is a little bit kind of trying to talk, but I I think this is my responsibility to come in here and try my best, because I see nobody coming, nobody saying anything to save the city, to save our kids, to take care of our kids in the school. Our kids don't need to go to school or every day, it's gonna happen something, you know? I made this speech to say here, and try my best to explain what's going on across the country. We all the time, we close our eyes, oh, it's not gonna happen here in Acton, oh, our city is so too safe. It is safe, but we need to take action before something happens. We need to be an example for this city. We give example for other cities do the same thing. Take action before something happens. I know maybe doesn't matter how kind of enforcement we may put it there on the school. May something could happen, yes, but prevent 99% the school shooting. And a lot of cities did put all this protection in the school, like metal detection, cameras, secure guard in the school, and this work. And doesn't cost our city to do the same thing too. And let me see. By signing this petition, you will help ensure that your voice heard by local authorities, the school district, and the law enforcement. We are causing them to implement a real solution that have been proven to work in other communities, and the solution that can keep our kids safe here in Acton. We're not asking for extreme measures. We are asking for practical, reasonably steps to protect our children without infringing anyone's rights. No parents, no teacher, no student should have to live in fear to live in fear of a school shooting, and no communities wait until it's too late. Together, we can make a difference. This petition is just the beginning. I ask each of you to stand with me, to stand with the children, and demand that the school remain safe, have havens for learning and growing. Let's show the leaders, the Acton would not. The leader of the Acton, we would not waiting until Trajan strikes. We will act now. Thank you all for your time and for joining us this important cause. I urge you to sign the petition and spread the word, and let's make Acton example and for safety for community and for action. Together we can protect our children and prevent gun violence on the school. Thank you. And
Thank you, Omar.
let me express just one little thing here. Okay. And this is happened. Gun violence doesn't start just on day now.
So I don't think that we're going to sign tonight. I'm not speaking for anyone else. I just as it's not a part of the meeting.
Yep.
But I do want to get back to you with an avenue you can take. Is that appropriate or, yeah?
Because I just come because years, not just now, 1998, 1997, 1998, 2002, most of this is happen all the time.
Yeah.
We cannot like stand waiting something happen in Acton.
I completely understand, and I would love to get in touch with you privately and figure out a way to, put you in touch with people that can
All right,
help.
no problem.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. A chair update. I'm sorry, I don't have an update. I am leaving it to Alyssa and Dean maybe to talk about CPC applications and whatnot.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a number of items here. The Community Preservation Committee has adopted the 2024 CP plan, and it's now available online, and we'll be accepting applications for CPC funding until November 12th. The Planning Department staffs the Community Preservation Committee, so certainly reach out to them. We'll be interested to see what comes up. Next item, on September 26th, we had a Department of Public Works Building Committee meeting here in this room. It was open to the public. We specifically solicited input from the public. The presentation in its entirety is also available online. There'll be more information about the project later on in this meeting. On October 1st, we had the Colonial Books and Brews event. It was a joint effort between the Acton Memorial Library and the Acton 250 Committee, with substantial funding from the Acton Lions Club and the Acton Memorial Library Foundation. It was very well attended. Not sure how many people showed up, but we did roll out the Isaac Davis Brown Ale and sold 160 glasses of it at the event, so that was pretty successful. And upcoming events with the Acton 250 Committee on October 23rd in this room. Robert Gross will be speaking on Acton Concord's Road to Revolution. That'll be at 7 o'clock in the Faulkner Hill Room on October 23rd. Thank you.
Alyssa? Oh, David?
Yeah, I wanted to pass along several things from the last week's, week before last school committee meeting. First of all, the school committee approved a cellular telephone tower on the school property. They were particularly worried about communications during emergencies. The superintendent said that during some emergencies, he's had to go outside the building and walk around until his cell phone had enough signal to be able to take steps to contact parents. The second thing, the school committee approved agreement, memorandum of understanding with the Acton's Police Department on the school resource officer program. There's a template memorandum of understanding that the school committee and the police department negotiated on, and it was accepted at their last meeting. And finally, the school district has a survey on about the elementary school budgets. It's specifically to identify opportunities to balance educational needs with those of taxpayers. They're encouraging anybody and everyone to fill out the survey. You can get at it two ways. One is you can go to abschools.org and scroll down just a tiny bit, and you'll see community input sought. And if you click on that, you'll go to the survey, or you can go to abschools.org/news, and you'll see it as the second item in the news. At least today is the second item in the news. If you wait a few days, it may not be the second item. Thank you.
Jim, do you have? Alyssa?
Thank you. I have a couple of announcements, actually four. The Acton Buckborough Cultural Council is accepting grant applications until October 16th. You can find more information and the form at their website, which is actonbucksboroughculturalcouncil.org. And just to let everyone know, individuals, nonprofit groups, schools, libraries, religious organizations are eligible to apply. The Habitat for All inclusionary zoning webinar that was scheduled for this week on the 10th has been rescheduled to November 6th at 7 p.m. I assume there'll be a newsflash, information on the website about with the link to that webinar. On Sunday, October 20th, at the Sargent Memorial Library in Buckborough, the third annual Diwali Fest will be held. It is from 12 to 4:30, and it's free entry. There are 40 vendors, music, dance, Rangoli art contest, and if the parking lots at the Sargent Memorial Library and Blanchard Elementary on Mass Ave are full, you can park at the Boardwalk campus, Douglas and Gates, and there will be a free shuttle bus going down to the library. So it's a lot of fun. I encourage everybody in the community who is available and interested to attend. And then my last announcement is that the Stand Up to Stigma Scarecrow Contest is on again at Cucurbit Farm on Parker Street, and proceeds from that fundraiser benefit the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Central Middlesex. Visitors are asked to vote for their favorite scarecrow. There's still time to create a scarecrow if you'd like to enter one. There are about 35 entries right now, and Cucurbit is hoping to have 100 scarecrows on display. There are some town scarecrows. So I sent David some pictures that he can share. We have a couple of,
Oh, yeah.
oh,
sorry.
yes, with the chair's permission. So we do have one from the Acton Fire Department, and that little fire truck, the light actually spins round and round and lights up. There's also one from the Police Department. And, oh, great. The scarecrow is in the middle. On either side are real live police officers. And then there's this one. The Acton Select Board. So go to Parker Street, Cucurbit Farm, and check out all of the Stand Up to Stigma scarecrows.
Thank you to Fran and Alyssa for making the select board scarecrows happen.
I just want to say our pets went a little nuts. Fran's dogs were barking, and Jim, I hope you're a cat person, because my cat kept jumping up and knocking your hat off as I was constructing the scarecrow.
John, manager update?
Thank you. I wanted to let you know, I checked in with the new town clerk, Leo. He started last week. He's doing a few weeks ago. He's been very busy. They just finished mailing out about 7,500 mail-in voting applications. So if you sign up for one and you're one of those 7,500 people or so, you should have it by Saturday. And if you don't, check back in with the town clerk's office. The deadline to apply for mail-in is later this month, but we already sent out 7,500, so just wanted to mention that.
Our first public hearing, number 3, the 7:10 PM site plan special permit, 06/24/2024, 490, 358 Great Road, AHC Incorporated and Thomas Buckborough, will be continued to November 18th at 7:10 PM. We do.
So I move to continue the hearing until November 18th at 7:10 PM.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Unanimous. Moving on to our 7:20 PM, Section 12, all alcoholic beverage pouring license, Bracamontes Incorporated, DBA Luna Mexican Cuisine, 20 Nagog Park, Acton, Mass. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138, Section 12 of the General Laws that the Select Board will hold a hearing in the Francis Faulkner Room 204 in the Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually on October 7th, 2024 at 7:20 PM on the application of Bracamontes Incorporated, DBA Luna Mexican Cuisine, for an all-alcoholic beverage license located at 20 Nagog Park, Acton, Mass. The application is on file in the Select Board office and may be viewed during normal working hours. The public may attend virtually at actonmass.gov/meeting/selectboard or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. And telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Do we have a representative from Bracamontes? Oh, how are you? If you would like to come to the microphone and just hit the button to turn it on, and we'd love to hear what you're requesting. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? I'm good. How are you? We're requesting for a full liquor license. We're trying to bring a little flavor into town for a Mexican restaurant.
Nice. So you'll be in the Nagog Park area where?
We are,
Yeah.
yes.
Wonderful. Do any members have questions or?
Just a few little questions. How big is the restaurant? How many seats will there be?
It's gonna hold 100, 13 on the bar and 87 on the tables.
Okay, so yeah, I was just about to ask if there was going to be a separate bar. So you
Yes.
answered that. Do you have a time frame that you intend to open?
We would like to open hopefully by the first week of December.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? Jim?
This might be a question for staff. Well, let me ask you first. So part of this process, I'm assuming, is a building permit to make the changes that you want to make. Is that already been done, or is that coming up?
It's already been done.
Okay, great. And I guess the question for staff was whether the building permit triggered the fossil fuel-free bylaw.
The building commissioner was out today, but he did stop by and talk to me about this. I believe he left a note saying that less than 50% of the building is being renovated. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah, that means it would not trigger that requirement, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you
Sounds
very
like a
much.
great place.
Alyssa?
I'm excited for this new flavor. I love the menu. I had a question, maybe for staff, maybe for you. The police chief noted that there were some parts of the application that were left blank, and I'm just wondering if those have all been corrected. I think one of the ones that I saw was, I don't remember if it was for the alcoholic beverages or the victualler license, but there was a note that the manager needed to be a citizen. Are you a citizen? And that was one of the things that was left blank. So I just want to make sure all of those missing entries were completed.
I am a citizen. I also if I'm not mistaken, I had my team double check the application and send it back with all the comments that we spoke.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are we ready to vote? Oh, sure.
Do you have restaurants elsewhere, or is this your first restaurant?
This one personally, it's our first one is me and my brother, which is in over there, Julian, but our family owns a couple more restaurants around the area.
Oh, nice.
And we've been involved in this business for as long as I can remember.
Okay, well, congratulations on your first one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim?
I think the first step is that I would move to close the hearing.
Yes, thank you.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Nice. And another motion?
Well, let's see, we have two different, this is the one about the liquor license?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I would move to approve the Section 12 all alcoholic beverage pouring license for Bracamontes Incorporated, doing business as Luna Mexican Cuisine.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Actually, now we have to wait 3 minutes.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you could, if you wish, do the consent items for 3 minutes.
Okay.
The next one is just scheduled for 3 minutes from now, so we
And you
can't
might-
do it early.
Not move far from the podium. Okay. Okay, so consent items, number 14, approve posting of state warrant for November 5th, 2024 election. 15, approve town clerk's recommended police officer staffing plan for November 5th, 2024 election. 16, approve minute meetings from August 26th, September 9th, and September 20th, 2024. 17, approve the appointment of Brandy Rando as Assistant Collector Treasurer per MGL Chapter 41, Section 39C. Approve appointment of Ron Beck as an Associate Member of the Planning Board with a term to end on June 30th, 2029. 19, approve appointment of Patricia Clifford as a full member of the Planning Board with a current term to end on June 30th, 2028. 20, approve a one-day malt and wine license for Theater 3 for an event on November 2nd, 8th, 9th, 15th, and 16th, 2024 at 250 Central Street. 21, approve a one-day malt and wine license for Neshoba Valley Neighbors Club for an event on October 25th, 2024 at 102 Nonsip Path. And lastly, number 22, approve a $1,000 donation from Digital Credit Union for the Acton Police Department to provide programs and services that make a difference.
Move to approve consent items 14 through 22 inclusive.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Consent unanimously approved?
We still have a minute.
Yes. This is the longest minute ever. Is it?
You have to wait for your computer.
Yeah. No, it's bizarre. There we go. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on October 7th, 2024 at 7:30 PM in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually on the application of Bracamonte Incorporated, DBA Luna Mexican Cuisine at 20 Nagog Park, Acton, Mass., under Section 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws for a common vittler's license. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Remote participants may view the hearing at www.actonmass.com/selectboard or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. Computer and app users may use the raised hand feature to request to speak. Okay. So this is to request a vittler's license. So what are the hours of operation? Just curious.
We're gonna be open from 11 to 10.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Okay.
We're mostly run a family scene.
Yep.
Where you come with your children, come in and eat, and we'll go home nice and early.
Nice, nice. Any questions from members or Alyssa?
So I have a question about the seating. In the application, it says the seating capacity is 132, but you'll only have 100 seats.
Yes.
Do you have plans in the future to add seats, or is that just how big the space is?
It's how big the space is, and also we kind of like the 100 number where you can run a tight ship.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Are we? Nope. David.
Can I ask Alyssa where she saw the menu?
I know.
Oh, it was actually in the alcoholic beverage
Oh, okay.
at the very end.
Okay.
You should have a look because it looks fantastic.
Thank you.
So, close the public hearing.
Sure, I'll move to close the public hearing.
A second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now to.
And then I can move to approve the common vittler license for Bracamontes, Inc., doing business as Luna Mexican Cuisine at 20 Nagog Park in Acton.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Any oppositions? No. Good luck. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Is there another short one? We have 8 minutes.
I can do number 11. So, sorry, I meant to say 13. 13. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to take a moment to announce the hard work of all the staff and volunteers that are working on several different initiatives and who are successful in being awarded grants from the state. There are a few energy efficiency grants that Andrea and her team have been working on, which the exact specific name escapes me, but it'll help support some programs that they're working on. The library was recently awarded a small grant to help with some programming that they're doing. Wanjiko Koshohe, our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, we've been working on advancing initiatives in the Collins Center study, and we were just awarded a $50,000 grant to do an equity audit, which would include both primarily internal, but it'll also include some community engagement as well. That's from the Community Compact Program. Also from that program, Under Penny Funioli's leadership, we were awarded a grant to do a community health assessment. We did a smaller one about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. Cheryl Ball led that effort, and we were planning on trying to secure funding to do that again, and we just got $40,000 to do that. So that's a community project. It's community input surveys, everything else that goes into that. So those things we're going to start probably this winter. Probably not going to jump on right away, but it's exciting to get those resources from the state. Through the work that Corey York is doing at Public Works to address our stormwater infrastructure needs, we were able to secure $139,000 or so from the Dam and Seawall Grant to help with the Bellows Farm Dam project, which I'm not sure exactly how much of the work it'll pay for, but it'll certainly help with addressing one of the dams in town that we need to do some work on. Finally, we were awarded a significant grant from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for related to potential land acquisition, which we're really excited about, and we look forward to talking more about when the time is appropriate to do so.
Thank you.
Would the flag policy be short, or do we expect a lot of discussion?
We can try. You want to try?
Sure.
Okay, so I took the board's direction after our last discussion to create a policy that can stand alone and be posted on the select board page of the town website. So I pulled the wording from the motion from, I think it was November 2020, and added the 2 statements about government speech and select board approval being required, and put it into active voice instead of passive voice at the request of town council. So there it is. Love to hear your thoughts.
Jim.
I think this reflects the intent of the board very clearly. One of the things we said at the time was that at some future date, we might consider additional changes to allow other kinds of flags, but that it was important to get the town, that this was government speech clause in there as quickly as possible. So I'm glad that's done, or at least I'm glad we have this draft here, and I look forward to approving it.
Dean?
I would move that we approve the flag policy that was posted in the packet.
Second.
Oh, are there any people online before we close? Yeah,
Madam Chair, there are 4 people online, none of whom have their hand raised.
thank you. Thanks, Alyssa. Okay.
So I just wanted to add a couple of comments following up on what Jim said. I hope that we can revisit this in the future to discuss including town-supported events that we engage in. There are several throughout the year. One of them is the federal holiday, Juneteenth. And I did, receive some feedback from members of the public who decided not to speak tonight, just concerned about, who is the authority that we're looking to as the determiner of a sovereign nation, are tribal nations included? It seems discriminatory because the members of the United Kingdom are not sovereign. So I think it will, when we get to that point, it will be a broader community discussion, and we should hold some public engagement. And I also wanted to mention one more thing. John sent me a news article about a case in Nashua that I would encourage the board members to to search for, ask John to send it to you. It hasn't been decided yet, but I'm very interested in knowing the outcome, even if it's in another state, because it just will make us aware of the kinds of potential issues and questions and arguments around flag policies and how broad and or limited we want to be comfortable making them.
Thank you for working on this. Yeah. Do we have a second? We have a second, yeah.
It's already made and seconded. I just wanted to say that I agree with, at your discretion, bringing it back for
Yep,
further
yep.
discussion to see if we want to enhance the policy.
Okay.
Oh, and in addition to enhancing the specific flag raising policy, I'd love to see a unified policy. John sent us, after our last discussion, the flag lowering policy, and maybe we might want to include what kind of condition the flags are in, et cetera. So it'd be nice to have a single policy for the town that covers everything flags. Yeah.
Now we can vote. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Alyssa. Moving on to our next public hearing. This notice is hereby given under Chapter 138, Section 15 of the General Laws, that the Select Board will hold a hearing in the Francis Faulkner Room, 204 at Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually on October, I don't know what I am reading, but October 7th, 2024 at 7:40 PM on the application of Even Murray's 525 Mass Ave, Acton, Mass. For a change in hours. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. The application can be remote participants may view the hearing at www.actonmass.bos or from a telephone. Dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar. And I just lost my screen. Technology. The application. Participants may view the hearing at, I read this, Acton/SB, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. Computer and app users may use the raised hand feature to request to speak.
Point of order.
Yes.
Can we hold this hearing with the notice having the wrong date? It's in the past, September 23rd.
I wondered, it is the,
The notice that you read is appropriate.
Oh,
Or how
okay.
you read it is appropriate.
How I read it, I just read
You
it.
properly noticed the people here. Are you concerned about what was sent out in the newspaper?
I just read the date today, yeah.
Was there something sent to the newspaper?
Not a newspaper, no, but, oh, to the Action Limited?
Yeah.
The one for Action Limited is for tonight.
Is it correct?
The one for the Action, yes, it is correct. The one I have in the packet, I apologize.
So-
Oh, no,
so
no,
the-
no,
the-
that's okay.
So the
So
event,
we're
so
good.
the hearing was properly noticed in the legal
Yeah.
venues it's supposed to. We just gave you a wrong copy to read tonight.
Well, I pulled it from the website, that's all. So, we're good. You're changing your hours.
Yes. Yes, we've finally been able to hire a couple of extra people, so we're able to open Sundays and Mondays now, so.
Any discussion or? Oh, Alyssa.
I just have a question, because I checked the website, because I wanted to know what the change was, and it is reflective of these new hours. So are we just sort of back approving a change that's already been made?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to close the
Oh,
public
yeah,
hearing.
thanks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So I move to approve the change in hours for Eve and Murray's at 525 Massachusetts Avenue as listed in the application. Is that good enough? Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
On to our first item under new special business. Consider options for wayfinding signage.
This is another effort funded by a grant that's being led by Kristen Guichard, who is here virtually, and I will be pulling up information and sharing it that she intends to present. Is Kristen out there? Oh, yeah, there she is. Thank you. Share.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Can you hear me all
Hi,
right?
Christine. Hi, how are you?
We can't hear you that well, but we can hear you. Hold on. How's that?
John, thank you for screen sharing. And I just wanted to confirm it's the most recent version that you have, and I think it is, so that's great. So I'll get started, if that's all right with everyone. So tonight, as John mentioned, I'm presenting an update on the town's wayfinding design project. And town wayfinding, just to make sure everyone understands what it is, it refers to a system of signs, maps, and visual cues that helps people navigate and understand the layout of the town. So for example, if you're driving from one town to the next, you may see a welcome to Acton sign, for example. And as you drive a little bit further, there may be a decision-making point where you see another sign that directs you one way to the downtown, another way to a train station, and possibly another way to parking. So it really can help to enhance visitor experience by providing clear direction to key destinations like landmarks, parking, public services, and different shopping areas. Next slide, please. So several Acton planning documents include wayfinding as a strategy to implement various community goals related to economic development, village enhancement to help define coherent centers, strengthen local businesses, and connect residents and visitors to everything that Acton has to offer. Next slide. So putting the strategies into action, as John mentioned, last year we applied and were awarded a technical assistance grant for wayfinding design. So the consultant who was assigned to Acton was actually the same consultant who designed the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail wayfinding signage, Mark Faberman. His business is called Faberman Design. And through this grant, Faberman Design has been helping us to create a full set of design options, which will then lead to full design and specification plans with a series of different sign options that are called like a family of elements. So kind of a whole different set of signs that carry a theme throughout the whole different series. Next slide, please. So we started the project by providing inspiration to the designer, and the inspiration was derived from feedback that we had received through various previous and more recent engagement efforts that outlined what people valued and enjoyed most about Acton. For example, historical and cultural events, the Arboretum, nature trails and rail trails, and a general strength of community that was cited by Acton residents in the past. Next slide, please. So with that inspiration, the consultant created 2 design options that we'd like to show the select board tonight to get feedback on and to get an understanding of which direction we should move forward with. So the first one we're calling Design A, Arboretum Graphic. So it takes a photo of the Arboretum that we had and made it into type of a graphic where you can see kind of a trail meandering through. That's actually a viewpoint when you're walking right into the Arboretum. And then the next slide shows another option we're calling Design B, Town Hall. So in this particular design, it has two different toppers. One mirrors the bridges of the rail trails and China Trail that's at the Arboretum, and the other would be more of like a metal cutout of the letters spelling Acton, and with the town hall in the background there in that little oval. And then the next option is similar. We're calling it Design B Arboretum because it's an actual photograph that's been made to look like more of like a painting in the middle of that oval, but with the same frame options of the Acton topper or the kind of top of the bridge topper. So the next slide is an example of what the family of elements would look like. So this is just showing what one could be carried through, showing different parking or different types of signs, depending on where they would be located in town. And then the next slide is just explaining what we're hoping to gather for feedback from the select board tonight to really pick a design to move forward with. And then we would have a community survey that would ask for additional refinements as well as a slogan. And then we would come back to the select board for final design. And so the next slide, I have all three of the options there. And I was hoping that we could pause on this slide to gather some feedback from the select board. And we would be looking for you to make the decision. Should we go with design A or design B, town hall, or design B, arboretum? And from there, we would ask the community some additional refinements such as like color or which toppers do you like the best, for example. So I may pause there if that's all right with you and get some feedback.
Thank you, Kristen. These are all so beautiful. Alyssa.
I agree, Fran. These are all beautiful. Kristen, I wonder if the designer gave you any indication on whether they were all accessible to folks with visual impairments, or if one of them was more inclusive.
The designs are focused on making sure that they're all the same in that regard. The size font is kind of a specific standard based on what people can visually see from a car. So there's really not much of a difference between one and the next.
Thank you. So I guess I was thinking that perhaps the top one, because it's on a background rather than open, the letters are open to whatever is behind it. So as the light changes, as your position changes, there might be a building or trees or whatever. I would think that design A is the most accessible to people with visual impairment, but I am absolutely not versed in that field. So that's my only comment, other than I'm kind of uncomfortable with the five of us choosing one to bring to the community for refinement rather than getting the community to weigh in on all of these options. But maybe the experience of planners is that if you do that, it's sort of going to be even. 25% of people will like each of the four designs.
John.
Yeah, I think I would just add that the target audience for these signs are people driving vehicles. It's not necessarily, these aren't pedestrian signs necessarily. Some of them may be, Kristen, but the ones that we're looking at here, right? And I think you're right. If the community all loved one and the board didn't like it, then we were.
And yes, thank you, John, for pointing out that this is for drivers. But everybody's, like, as you age, your vision, declines, and so you're not able to see as well, even with corrective lenses. I can't see as well when I'm driving at night because I'm sensitive to the light changes, so I would still think that we should keep in mind which ones are the easiest for people to read.
David.
So I like the town hall design on the left. So with the bridge work on the top, and I think that, if I'm now correctly understanding what Alyssa said, that also has the writing on the side. I like the bridge work, I think it's quite distinctive. I like the picture of town hall because it indicates Acton non-verbally, and I like the color of that one. That's definitely my favorite. You know, I like the pictures of the Arboretum, but I think nobody would know that that's Acton. Even me, right? I go to the Arboretum, and I'm not sure that I would recognize, certainly the first one, as being a stylized version of the Arboretum. I do have one comment or question on the writing at the slogan at the bottom, where communities thrive. I'm not sure if that's a slogan that we would be going with or whatever. If we were, I would like to change it to where community thrives. I don't think of us as being multiple communities in one place. I think us being a community together. So I prefer community be singular and then the proper verb tense.
Great, thank you. We do have a slide coming up about slogans, but I just took note of that now, so thank you very much.
So Kristen, to make things completely difficult, I like design B on the right. And design, I agree with David. I love town hall. I love looking at town hall. I love the picture of town hall. And I do like the Acton in the ironwork and the sign. I think that's pretty cool. So that would be my choice, but I can be swayed. Dean?
Yeah, I also like the design B on the right, town hall. With the, I do like the cutout letters on the top, says Acton. You know, maybe we could do the colored portion of that in blue rather than in the mustard color, but it doesn't really matter to me that much, and I agree with David on the, if we're gonna change the wording on that slogan.
Jim?
Well, I'm thinking about the message we're trying to send. So this is targeted for people that don't know their way around Acton. Maybe they've never been here. And so I guess the key message for me is, yeah, you belong here. You're welcome. You know, come on in. We're not like exclusive. We're not trying to keep some people out. So to that extent, I don't really like the fussy signs with the letters built in iron. It says to me, this is an expensive town. You know, this is a town, we're gonna spend a lot of money on making little cutout letters that fit inside curves. You know, so I don't know, it wasn't the message I wanted to send. So I was drawn to design A, which seems like the simplest, the least expensive. It's like a piece of wood with the name of the town on it. So I like that. Yeah, so that was me. And I think to me, well, we'll get to the logos later, but yeah.
Alyssa?
I always have a lot of thoughts about design and art. I didn't know that was a bridge until David said it was a bridge. I was wondering what those bars were, because it did seem like a gate. What's up with that? So I do like that, because Kristen said the designer got feedback from the community that historic and cultural resources are important, cultural events. So that reflects or evokes the rail, trail, bridges, and a historic cultural resources town hall. But I also agree with Jim that the simpler, less expensive sign on the top. But if we don't really love the image because it doesn't bring to mind the town of Acton, although I recognize that view of the Arboretum, I wonder what everybody might think about a unified brand, because the seal has the Isaac Davis monument, and the library's new logo has the Isaac Davis monument as the binding, or the what's that called? Sorry, of a book. Binding of a book. So I just wonder if maybe our wayfinding signs could also have the Isaac Davis monument. It's a very prominent monument right in the center of town. So that's another idea, which isn't even on here. And I hate to tell designers go back to the drawing board, but that's another idea, to sort of unify all of our images across different entities.
Kristen or John, can you move to the slide that has all of the different size signs? Just, please. Yeah, just because they kind of look nice intertwined. Like, I don't know how wood would fit with all of these different and have continuity. That's what I was looking for, but that's my opinion. David?
So, I'm mostly tied to this color picture.
Yep.
And I would prefer town hall to the seal. We use the seal lots of places. I really don't have an
Yeah.
objection to the seal, but I like introducing something new. And one of the nice things I like about this color and this general design is, to me, it invokes the other signage that we have on some of the facilities in town, like the senior center or the rec center, where it's actually in the shape of the first sign, right? The choice A. But this is not, with the bridge metalwork, it's not too dissimilar. If we really wanted to consider price, I don't have any objection to the slab of wood, as Jim called it, design. But I like this picture better with town hall and the blue color.
And just to make a comment about cost, and maybe this is optimistically thinking, the next plan we would have once the community selected a final design would be to look for another grant for fabrication and installation, similar to what we did for the Brewsterman Rail Trail. So obviously you can't, promise that, but that would be our next step.
So no one seemed to be in favor of the choice C, at least on the board. No one was in favor of choice C. At least one person was in favor of all the others.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing now from my notes, we have Alyssa and Jim prefer design A, the Arboretum graphic. David, Fran, and Dean prefer some version of design B, town hall. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that, right? And
Yeah,
so,
I like the bridge blue town hall design B, the one on the left. And I love the idea of getting grant money to pay for these signs.
That's the hope. Okay, so
Dean?
design B, town hall with the bridge topper, is that emerging as?
Dean?
Yeah, I think on balance, I'd go with the design B with the bridge-type topper and the dark blue color. I think that'll work.
And I said I could be swayed.
Okay. The other thing we could do is we could put in a survey the Design B Town Hall and ask the public whether or not they like the mustard color better or the blue color, and the Acton topper or the bridge topper, to allow for some variation and additional feedback, but refining it to a point that we don't have, design being too broad. It's narrowed down a little bit. So we could do that as well, unless the board feels like they're kind of honing in on the one on the left already.
Jim?
Just in favor of the one on the left is that the one on the right with the mustard background and maybe that's brown or black lettering, is harder to read from a distance. The colors are close enough that I think if you want someone to read something quickly, the one on the left pops a lot more.
I like the navy too.
Okay. Did you want us to, so sticking with the color, with the blue, do you want us to ask in the survey the Acton topper or the bridge topper, or are you just all kind of leaning towards the bridge topper?
I think the bridge topper, but I do like the Acton. No, no, we can just, yeah, why don't we ask if it's not too much trouble?
Okay. Yeah, no, not at all.
I do agree with Alyssa's original point and Jim's last point, and I think the white on the blue is the easiest to
Yeah,
read.
it is.
You can imagine at night, the see-through is not going to be as easy to read. Or what Alyssa said originally, if it's backlit, also it might not be easy to read. Anyway, I think the white on the blue is the easiest to read.
Okay. So it
Jim?
sounds like design B with the bridge topper?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, John, so we can move to the next slide if you don't mind. And now we're getting into slogan options. So I would say we would probably change, let's see, slogan option. So where community thrives. David, is that what you were thinking?
Yes, that's, the wording is
I
here
think-
is the way I'd like to see it. On the signs samples, it's different.
Great, I think,
I prefer the text in A here.
great, okay. And then the other option is where trails connect and cultures unite, and embracing the past, inspiring the future, or we could choose to have no slogan. So what I was hoping to get an understanding from the board is whether or not you would like us to include this in the survey. We could just ask the community, which option do you like best? Or if you all felt strongly about one tonight, we could just move forward with that as well.
Alyssa? And then Dean. Yeah.
So I actually feel pretty strongly about having no slogan, because I think that a slogan sort of ties us to what the community is right now and doesn't allow room for the community to change, and that's pretty much the only thing that we can count on.
Dean?
Yeah, I think if we're going to have a slogan, I really like slogan B, where trails connect and cultures unite. I think that, especially we've done so much work with the rail trails, the conservation trails, and certainly we've reached out to try to encourage as much cultural diversity in this town as we possibly can. So I don't think those themes are going to change in the lifespan of these signs. So I'd go with B.
Jim?
I'm also leaning towards no slogan. I think the challenge I have with Trails Connect and Cultures Unite is it sort of implies that we're all headed towards some mysterious common culture where we're all going to unite. And I think what Dean said is that we've embraced a lot of diversity in the town, so there are different cultures, and that's fine. They don't have to unite. They have to get along and be friends with each other, but we don't all have to like the same food, or go to the same churches, or, so I'm leaning against the Cultures Unite message. For that similar reason, that's why actually I liked the Where Communities Thrive more than Where Community Thrives, because it has this implication that, yeah, there's lots of different communities in Acton. That's great. We love that. But assuming that that's not a majority point of view, no slogan seems like a good place to land.
David?
So it sounds like there's not much support for A, but if people were in favor of A, I could switch to the different, to plural and fix the tense. The reason I like A is I've always kind of felt this, but actually 3 times in the past 2.5 weeks, people have come up to me and said, they had different circumstances, but some people just came here, some people came, the reason they came here, and they said they felt really supported by our community. And the fact that they came to me and said this, and they didn't have to say it, right? We were just chatting, and they said, and it's happened, it made an impression on me the 3rd time, right? So some person had lived here a long time, and the reason that they moved here was because of our diverse community, and it's been really good. Another person just arrived and said they're kind of amazed at how supportive the community was. And so I think that's an important thing. I like the singular and the version better, but I understand Jim's point of view, and I could live with the where communities thrive. But I think of it as the fact is, the people, when they said it to me, they used singular, right? They said that they felt supported by the community. And I just think that's cool. So anyway. We could also ask Kristen to ask on the survey.
I was leaning toward that too, and I'm not, I don't know. I was thinking no slogan would be on the sign, but just joking. John. Alyssa.
So I just wanted to add that this conversation is also why I feel strongly to have no slogan, because everyone will interpret those words differently based on their experience. And also, if these are wayfinding signs, extra words, I think will undermine the effectiveness of the sign. You're driving a car. Already, we have too many distracted drivers. So having fewer words to read to be able to go where you need to go. And I think if we're exploring slogans, then maybe that needs to be part of our next comprehensive community plan, or something on the website, or a video that we create, or a monument memorial. That's where describing the community fits in, rather than this way to parking. So.
I could live with no slogan too, but anyway, I guess I'd choose A first and D second.
I could live with no slogan.
Or maybe a community, I don't know, outreach for a contest, a slogan contest.
So I was just going to mention that in certain applications, and I'm not really, it's not really clear to me where this slogan would go in terms of which signage it would be used for, or if it would be used otherwise. But from an economic development standpoint, there is a benefit to having something. I don't know which or when, but that's I think part of it is that the target for these things are people that are trying to become acquainted with the town, either because they want to have a business here, or because they want to live here, or because they're passing through, or they, you know, they're looking for shopping. So I think it is going to be hard to pick a slogan, and D is probably the easiest path forward. But I just wanted to mention that it's not just for kind of nostalgia. There's an economic development reason for considering a slogan. Yes.
I'm asking for the slide that shows us where these slogans, which signs these slogans might be on.
I think that's the family of elements one. Most of the time, I think you would want to see it in your, like, your welcome to Acton sign. So that's kind of the one that we've been looking at when you were considering all of the different options. It can repeat on some of the other ones, but it would be smaller, so more pedestrian oriented. But as John mentioned, it can act as like a branding for your town. And so it starts to kind of repeat itself in certain locations, specifically in like welcoming people in or possibly to a particular business center or area like that. But it would not necessarily be on every sign.
Jim?
Another option, if you're trying to communicate something, is to have, a short 1 or 2 word message integrated with the picture. I'm thinking if it just says something like, welcome. That's kind of what we're trying to say. We're trying to say, yeah, come on in. So I wonder if it could be just a single word part of the image.
David?
I'm going to actually change my mind slightly from the beginning, and based on what Jim said in his previous comment. For, where I was saying where community thrives, that's kind of a message, I think, to people already here. I agree with Jim, and especially considering now if this is on the signs near the borders into town, where communities thrive sends a message to people coming in that there are multiple communities here, and we all do well, right? And so I would change my mind and go with the plural, and that, thinking about it as an entrance sign. And if we want to change our mind a lot, we could just have a couple S hooks on the bottom. We could have a swinging sign that said, like Sunday brunch, the people would hang the thing on the bottom. No, I'm just kidding about that. I don't think we should do that. But anyway, so I like the plural now or nothing.
Alyssa?
Thanks. I'm hoping that these are in compliance with our sign bylaw. But also, I think, based on what John said regarding economic development, I think we should bring it to the people. And it looks like it's not going to be on this way to parking. It will only be on the borders and some of the larger signs. And I hope, since it serves an economic development purpose, that we can make sure that these go out to business owners, whether they live in town or not, so they can weigh in on the kind of messaging, with their experience and knowledge, the kind of messaging that would be attractive to prospective business owners that might want to move in. And if I had to pick through one from A to C, I would say the first one, either plural or singular. Because I think of community as a concept as well as a group of people, so.
Sorry. If I may say, but again, as an entrance, singular means that we are already what we are, whatever that is, and I think is inherently less welcoming to Jim's point. I know I'm arguing against myself from the beginning, but I think I think there's a difference in thinking of it when it's as an entrance sign, as opposed to, say, a sign in front of Town Hall. And we can't have multiple slogans. So, but the signs coming into town, I think, where communities thrive indicates that, we're not an insular community. So, anyway.
My favorite was C, but I'm the odd man out, so I can. Alyssa?
All right, so it sounds like a survey would be possibly the best path forward. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. So our next steps, we will take those slogans as well as the option of no slogan to the community and get some feedback. And then in the meantime, we'll have our designer make any final tweaks that we need to do, as well as identifying locations for different types of signs and put that together for the select board. We would like to be able to come back. I'm thinking November 4th might work for us. I'm not sure what the select board's agenda will end up looking like, but we would like to get an official endorsement once we have a final set that's ready to go. So I'm not sure if that's all right with you, but that's what we're thinking of for a timeline.
That sounds good, Kristen. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for all of your feedback. I think design is really tough. Everybody's got, their own personal opinions. And like you said, certain things kind of bring out different feelings to different people. So I appreciate all of your thoughts and feedback, and we'll be back soon with some final designs. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, have a good night.
So our next agenda item, approve extension of grant of option agreement 362-364 Main Street with the Acton Housing Authority, McManus Manor, LLC, and Town of Acton.
Thank you. I believe there's a representative here from the Housing Authority if there are any questions, but this is a request to extend the option agreement that the board had entered into a few years ago. The option actually expired, but work is well underway to implement its intent. And so the Housing Authority drafted this extension with which, if the board approves, it would give them a little more time to do some of the things that they need to do to get this project into a point where they could implement the purchase and sales agreement that is sort of the second step in this option agreement process. So that's the overview. If there are any specific questions, I'm happy to address them, and I think Kelly Cronin may be able to as well. Taking a step back, sorry. This, the town owns a site on Main Street where the Kennedy Landscaping Building is. And that is the future site of the McManus Manor affordable housing development that the Housing Authority has been working on for a few years. To help facilitate their development, the town entered into an option agreement with them that said, yes, you can buy the land from us if you figure everything else out. And they've been figuring everything else out, and they just want to extend that option a little while longer.
David?
Yes, John, are the only changes here the dates, or are there other changes?
That's a good question. Thank you. Let me,
Can I ask
yes.
Kelly to join?
Is Kelly, are you available to answer that?
Yeah, hold on, I have to promote her. So.
Hello, folks. Hope you're all doing well. So we're in the process of getting ready to close with our financiers, our funders. The hope is that we're closing at the end of December. The way this project is primarily being funded is with tax credit investors. That is the funding mechanism that the state uses for larger projects. So when we did Whittlesey Village, it was 12 units. It was all grants and mortgages and some CPA money. This project, the largest amount of money that we're receiving is from tax credit investors. So you create a partnership in an LLC. So you'll see on the option agreement, it says McManus Manor LLC. So that is an ownership model where the housing authority is working with the tax credit investors. And after 10 to 15 years, the tax credit investors go away and it's just the Acton Housing Authorities LLC.
Can I ask my question again?
Yeah.
Kelly, are there differences in this agreement from the version previous other than the dates?
Listing the LLC as the owner as opposed to just the Acton Housing Authority.
Got it. Thank you.
So literally I think it's over $14 million. So the gap that we had from the delay, the state made additional tax credits available to us to make up that gap. So it's exciting. It's very exciting.
Did you ever think we were going to be here
Could
at
have
this
shovels
moment?
in the ground in January.
Kelly, you're
did,
here.
I
You're
did.
here.
I just was worried all along, but yeah, it's stuff. It's great.
Thank you. Any comments? David?
I was just going to make a motion if that's
Excellent.
okay. I move to approve the extension of grant of option agreement for 362 to 364 Main Street with the Acton Housing Authority for McManus Manor LLC in the town of Acton.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any oppositions? Unanimous.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kelly, for all your work.
Sure. Thank you.
So next up is discuss updates on Public Works Building Project and Public Design Presentation.
So, thank you. As I noted earlier in the evening, we did have a public presentation here in this room last week with the architect. They walked us through the building. They walked us through the where they have gone with the design. The summer has been spent doing a great deal of work, sort of teasing out all of the details of the building. As the board remembers, we had a feasibility study done a couple of years ago, and one of the concerns was, let's make sure that nothing has changed in the 2.5 years since that study was done. So we pretty much reconfirmed all of that information. And the architect, the owner's project manager, and town staff have been working, allocating the spaces, and most importantly, coming up with a phasing plan for how this project is going to proceed. There really are not any good options for moving the highway department off-site to some other location. There's just not space, industrial space available in town in a convenient location. They even looked in some surrounding towns to see if there's some space available. There really isn't anything that, obviously there's an additional cost, and just the disruption of moving all of the equipment, it was just too much. So the plan at this point shows to the phase construction. First phase would be a large vehicle garage that would be placed between the existing building and the tree line that separates the site from Forest Road. And then after that is done, there'd be a couple of the modules built, and then eventually the original building would be demolished. As you know, we had funding approved at town meeting to move the fuel depot. The design is well advanced on that, and the fuel depot moved out of there as sort of the first phase of the site. Believe they hope to get that work done, probably start clearing the site for the fuel depot during the winter and get that piece moved out of the way. During the public presentations, a great deal of discussion about the many inadequacies of the existing building, age, structural instability, health and safety violations, air quality issues, a lot of concern about the seismic instability of the building because there's not, the outside walls are basically stacks of cement blocks stacked one on top of another, held together with a little glue. Any kind of shaking or either from a seismic activity or vehicle strike to the side of the building could cause some serious problems to the building. So we went over all of those issues. We did have a couple of neighbors, and we specifically sent letters out to a lot of the neighbors on Forest Road to encourage their input. We did have two neighbors that showed up. One gave a fairly lengthy presentation about his concerns with not so much the building itself, but with the impacts of the vehicular traffic of citizens driving down Forest Road going to the transfer station. So we're certainly taking those into consideration, although, as you recall, the recommendation from the feasibility study committee a year and a half ago was to decouple the transfer station consideration from the highway department building consideration. So there'll be more to say about the transfer station and that whole operation at some later date, but now is not the time that that's going to be dealt with. But we're certainly engaging with the individual that raised the concerns, and we need to see what we can do as far as off-site enhancement for vehicular and pedestrian safety along Forest Road, which is a not uncommon connection. We did have one other neighbor that raised some issues. There was some long-standing drainage situations, which we'll be addressing. Again, that is with the road, not with any impact of what we're proposing. And we did get some input as far as, eventual engagement with landscape buffering and sound walls and that sort of thing between the residences on Forest Road and the new facility. One of the nice things about the way we're designing the new facility is that the new building will actually act as a sound wall in and of itself. So it'll focus all of the noise, the backup alarms and that sort of thing from the front end loaders, especially during storm emergencies. That noise is going to get projected towards the transfer station, not towards Forest Road. So we hope to make the situation better than it has been in the past. And as you're aware, building's been there for 50 years. So it's a use that folks are used to in the neighborhood. I'll just reiterate, one of the reasons why we wanted to stay in that location is that it is geographically very close to the center of town. So if we moved the operation to some potential location elsewhere in town, and if that location might be on the far side of town, then obviously you've got a loss of travel time every single day for every piece of equipment. So we really need to keep it in that present site. So those are kind of the steps that we've been taking. Based on the input from the committee and the input we heard from the public, the architects have sent the plans out to the estimator. They should be coming back in a few weeks with a price estimate, I should say. The committee will be meeting again in November, to go over what comes out of that estimate and move on to the next steps. But at this point, it's still full speed ahead. We think we've got a very viable project. I know the town manager and I will be speaking with the Finance Committee tomorrow night to address some of the concerns that they've raised. The questions that they've raised in the past, I think, are questions that we can answer fairly easily. But obviously, this is an expensive project. It's going to require bonding. It's going to require a 2/3 vote at town meeting. And it's going to require an override vote before town meeting. So we will have to make sure that we get our message out and that the public be very well educated about the project, because once we come to town meeting, if the override has already failed, then it sort of cuts our legs out from underneath us. But I'm confident that we're on the right path here. I think we've got a really good project. I think there's a compelling argument for it, not only for the need for the community, need for the employees. I think it fits very nicely into the long-term debt structure situation for the town. So I would defer to the town manager for any additional thoughts he might have.
Thank you. Yes, the public works operations are essential operations. They're part of what we are required to perform in terms of our obligations to help with public health and safety of the community. So the public works is a key part of that, a critical part of that. And the fact that their facility or our facility is inadequate and inefficient impacts their ability to perform those duties now, and it certainly will impact those responsibilities going forward if it's not addressed. So I'm optimistic, as mentioned, that the solutions that the design team and the building committee have come up with are ones that will get support from the community. But I also understand that there's a very large component as it relates to the financial impacts. And the finance team and I are working on some illustrative financing scenarios that we'll be sharing with the finance committee tomorrow night. I'm happy to give you a preview of those, although I'm still working on them. So it may be better to just do it tomorrow and then I'll tell you afterwards. But we're basically going to try to understand, a project like this, you have a financing strategy. You don't just you don't just borrow it all at once, for example. A lot of times you borrow it over 3 years. And when you're borrowing things over 3 years, it gives you ability to stabilize any potential tax impact on people that are paying for it. And so those are some of the things that we're going to try to do some work to explain tomorrow night, and then going forward to the board and to all of you. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the design team, we're having a cost estimates, 2 cost estimates delivered, peer-reviewed, and from that point, by the end of this month, we'll have a very good sense of what this is going to cost. Right now, we're just looking at square foot costs and estimating, and it's not really good enough. But by the end of this month, we'll have a good cost information that the board can use to help us direct this project forward. So I'm available to answer any questions. I'm looking forward to our presentation tomorrow night. We have 35 questions that the Finance Committee asked at its last meeting, and we're preparing answers to each of those questions to help advance the discussion with them and help them to understand all the things that they were asking about last time and whatever else comes up tomorrow night. Thanks.
Thank you. David?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm very, very supportive of this project, and I attended the meeting last Thursday, and I think I've attended almost all the meetings involving this project. To reiterate or elaborate on something that Dean and John said, the Public Works Department is a essential service. They construct and maintain our roads, sidewalks, infrastructure. They engineer all those when we make changes. They help residents with various emergencies. They snowplow our roads and sidewalks. They do tree and landscaping maintenance, et cetera. And it's very difficult for them now. I mean, it's really unreasonable for us to ask them to work in a facility that has cracking walls without reasonable space to sleep or rest between snowplow shifts, and without reasonable locker facilities for crews, and no locker facilities for women on the crews. They don't have enough room currently to maintain their equipment, and the current facility doesn't meet safety and air quality standards. It's really a bad thing. This is something we've been working on for several years, and has been on the select board's priority list, goal list for several years. I do want to say, to just make sure that there's no one's confused, is the type of override for this project is not like the override we had last year, which is an operating override. This override is called a debt exclusion. It means that for the life that we pay off the facilities, the payments on that debt can be excluded from the limits of Proposition 2.5. But it's not a permanent increase. It's just for the life of the bond payments.
Jim?
I've sometimes expressed some skepticism about the cost of the project, but I really appreciate the updates, and I feel like you've done exactly what needs to be done to understand, what the facility needs and, what it's going to cost, and you're going to proceed that way. So I'm on board now. A question I have is, I want to understand the context of, are we anticipating other major capital overrides in the next, year or two, either from the town or the school side?
So in terms of the town's capital investment plan that we've worked on, that's sort of a 10-year plan that should give us a sense of that. There are some major building projects that we need to consider, electrifying this building, and if not electrifying, well, no, I guess we don't have a choice anymore. Electrifying this building to when we're in the process of updating its heating and cooling systems, which are much in need of repair. There are some needs related to some of our fire stations need work. But in the short term, in the next 10 years, there isn't a plan to do a project of this scale, certainly. I don't know about the school district. I think that they had been considering capital plans of their own, but I don't have the latest information on that.
David?
Yeah, I just want to say that in the past, the town has only used debt exclusions for new buildings, major improvements to existing buildings, and there were two exceptions. One was for Nara Park, and once we used it for a land purchase. But with those last two exceptions, it's just for buildings and either new or renovations, and those really don't come along that often. And so we've not asked the taxpayers to exclude the debt on any kind of normal capital purchase. And similarly, for the school district, their capital purchases are really part of their assessment, right, to us. So if they need a new plow truck or whatever, we don't see those on our capital budgets or anything. We don't vote at them separately at town meeting. They're part of the assessments. And again, the only thing that they have asked the towns to exclude debt on are new buildings or major improvements to existing buildings.
Dean?
Yeah, just to confirm what David has just said, kind of walk our way through some of the big projects the town has undertaken that I'm aware of. This building here, it's a project of the 1980s, later 80s. The library expansion, late 1990s. I think we moved in there in 98 or 99. Public safety facility, that was in the early 2000s. Then we had a little bit of a skip there, but then we were into the North Acton Fire Station. Now we've got this building. It's pretty much, as David said, it's pretty much a 10-year, 10 years from one project to the next. And there was one that we had discussed, which kind of accounts for a little bit of that gap in there. We had toyed with the idea about building our own senior center. But due to many considerations, and in part because of the change in demographics of the town, we opted for a 10-year lease. But I think that seems to have worked out pretty well. But, that's why, about every 10 years, one of these comes up.
Alyssa?
Thanks. Thank you very much for the update. I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I'll definitely tune into the FinCom meeting tomorrow night and watch the recording. I'm definitely supportive of the project for all the reasons that were mentioned by everyone tonight. I am curious about Jim's question. Jim, you asked in the next year or two, and the only thing I can think of on the school side is the Conant School. And I know that, that would take maybe, with a building committee, 3 years before we actually bring it, not we, but the school committee would bring it to town meeting for a debt exclusion. So I don't know when that will start. But it's definitely not in the next year or two, but it could be in the next 3 to 5 years. And I will say that we approved at town meeting the debt exclusion for the fire station and the Boardwalk campus at the same town meeting, but that didn't follow right on the heels of an operational override. So there is the question of Conant sometime in the future, but not near future.
Can I just mention that
Yeah.
we have created a project webpage. It's actonma.gov/DPW facility, and that's all one word, DPW facility. And that will get you to the project page, which has a recording of the forum from last week. It also has the feasibility study. It has several other documents tracking through for this project, and we intend to maintain that site as we progress. So will be maintained as a resource to the public for information about the project. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to add, I'm also supportive of this project for all the reasons stated. And I was most curious, and maybe these questions can't be answered tonight, about the building phases, which I think is really a smart thing to do. And would it be over years, or, and I wondered if that could help with financing over years as well.
Well, that question actually was raised. When we talk about phasing, people say, okay, how long is a phase? There was discussion with the architect about, phasing it over a period of several years. Doing that would tremendously increase the cost, because the mobilization cost of starting another project, and you would either, if you did one phase, completed it, and then you did a second phase, then obviously you'd have to have 2 new sets of bid documents, whole bidding process. You don't know what the bidding environment is going to look like for phase 2, which would be necessary to add on to phase 1. The other issue would be that if you phased it out over a long period of time using the same contractor, there'd be so much uncertainty with the long-term change in cost of materials that you could have some real uncertainties there and higher costs. So when we talk about phasing it, the entire construction period would take about 2 years. So it would be moving fairly quickly. There would never be a time when there wasn't activity going on the site, moving into the next phase. But it would be one piece, then the next piece. And a lot of the phasing has to do with moving some of the operations. For instance, once the vehicle garage has been built, you could move a lot of the vehicles out of the existing garage and some other operations, workshops and that sort of thing, put them in temporarily into that new space, then knock the old space down and work on it that way. So we are talking about a 2-year time period. And the plan at this point is it would just be one set of bid documents, one process, but it will take a few seasons to get it done.
Well, thank you. David?
I just wanted, as a answer to your question from the other side, the payments on this building typically won't start until sometime after. It depends. This is the financing plan that John talked about, so we have to do that to be sure. But the payments won't happen usually till the end of the project or towards the end of the project. They won't hit tax bills next year. And so they'll hit sometime after, depending on the financing plan and whatever temporary financing is put in place for construction. And the second thing to note is this year is the last year for paying off the junior and senior high school renovations. And so that debt service goes out of scope in next year.
Thank you. I will definitely be tuning in tomorrow night. Alyssa?
So referring to the 35 questions that the Finance Committee sent over that you'll be answering tomorrow night, does that include the questions about the function that happens at the site where vehicles are maintained? Because I recall at a previous meeting, they were asking about wanting to know whether that needed to continue to happen at that site or if it could be moved to a different location, which is something different than moving the entire highway department somewhere else. And also I heard a question about the cost savings, the life expectancy of the vehicles when they're stored inside versus outside, because they mentioned some construction companies keep their vehicles outside. And then the last thing I thought was a key question that voters will want to know is that debt service that is rolling off. I think Christy Anderson mentioned was about $189 per year on the average tax bill, and we don't have our cost estimates yet, but once we do, being able to provide that figure to see what the one that we're going to be adding on if it passes at town meeting will be, whether it's comparable, higher, lower, by how much, et cetera. So are those the questions that you'll be addressing tomorrow? Some of them?
Yeah, since you raised them here, I'd like to address them now, because now they're out there. But happy to do that. So the question of should we not have mechanics and not have mechanic bays at the DPW, that I can understand that question. I think many of us don't repair our own vehicles anymore, so I get that. But I think the operations that we run are not, we're not just a company that does one thing, and we can just make sure we can service. We can just have that. We have a variety of things that we have to do, and while we do outsource some of our mechanic functions, outsourcing them entirely would not be practical if we wanted to maintain the type of response times and services that we provide currently. So we will be able to speak to that and how that having mechanics and having mechanic bays allows us to keep our equipment going longer, doesn't subject us to delays from trying to find a contractor, making sure a contractor will do the work. We have our mechanics work the same shift as everyone else, and if there's a big snowstorm, they're in here fixing things that break during the snowstorm. You don't usually get that from an outsourced operation. We'd have to take a truck out of service and just figure it out. So there's a lot of reasons why having mechanics in-house is good. We don't need to have 10 mechanics bays, but having the amount that we've programmed, we think makes sense for operation of our size with the consideration that it may get a little bit bigger in the future. The second question was about inside, outside. So, yeah, someone mentioned that a lot of contractors keep their vehicles outside, and I think, and I had a conversation with Dean about this also, and he reminded me that, yes, many construction companies leave their trucks at the sites because that's where they're working, and if they came home every night after the end of the job, they would waste money, time and money driving back and forth to the site. Acton, we're fortunate that we're a defined geographic area. We do our jobs on sites in this side of town, and we just shoot back to the shop for the night and keep the truck safe and secure there. Construction companies don't usually have that small defined geographic area, so it's not really a good comparison. College campuses and other sort of smaller defined areas usually keep their things inside, especially expensive equipment like we have, like our fire trucks, same thing. They only go a little bit of ways. We keep them inside to keep them safe, and keep the longevity of the equipment, improve the longevity of the equipment, because we have to. We can't win a big job and buy a new truck for it, like a contractor would. We have to maintain our equipment for 20 years, where they would have gotten rid of it after 10, for example. Then the 180, what was the 180 something?
So it was the amount for the average tax bill
Yeah, I don't
for the
think that
schools.
amount necessarily would check out with what CJ is tracking for that. But we do have information on that we'll be presenting tomorrow night about the amount of the taxpayer impact on what's falling off versus what could potentially be added. Thank you. And there's 32 more.
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit more about, keeping equipment inside as opposed to having it outside. There's some financial situations that the private sector can take advantage of by depreciating equipment being left outside, whereas we don't have that possibility. We just lose money as the stuff rusts away. An example that one of my favorites was that, in the tree industry, a brush chipper would be considered to last, maybe 10 or 15 years, being kept outside and used the way it usually is. We purchased one when I was down there in 1990, and it was still operational when we traded it in 2 years ago to get one that actually had improved safety features and improved capacity. So it's kind of unheard of to be able to keep equipment going for 30 years. And impossible if you leave it out in the weather. Same sort of situation you run into with things like snowplows that have to be, because of lack of space, they're left outside. The rust, the rot, the UV degrading all of the hydraulics on them, all of those sorts of things. You can save that, you can put that stuff outside, but if you expect to get really extended life of equipment, as we do here, I think we finally got rid of the 1984 Mack dump trucks, but I think we might still have one down there. Just keep these things going because you care for them, because they're so expensive, it's so hard to replace one. So you do whatever you can to keep them protected. So that's kind of the piece of it. And yeah, we are working in a limited area. The greatest example right now you can look at, go down to the future dog park where they're putting in the sewer line extension, and you'll see a great deal of heavy equipment owned by Onyx Corporation parked there out in the rain because it costs too much to move it back and forth from their spots. Whereas, we try to keep those things protected and try to maintain our investment.
David?
I'd like to add that there's also a readiness issue to keeping the equipment inside. So in the middle of a snowstorm, it's 10 degrees outside, it's just snowed 6 inches. You're probably pretty sad when you have to go out and push the snow off your car. You have to push the snow off 20 dump trucks, right? All of which with the hoods are taller than you can reach, right? You have to climb up something to reach them. And then you go to start the diesel when it's 10 degrees out, right? And it takes on a per truck basis, many minutes, I don't know, half an hour before each truck is out the door, right? And so it's much faster when you're responding to, an icing situation and that kind of thing, to have the equipment inside.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Thank you all three for answering my question, which actually wasn't my question, it was Finance Committee questions. But these details are all really good information for people to have. And, we have a few videos up here from, the tour and the presentation and the town meeting warrant preview article, and those were all sort of specifically geared to what was being accomplished at that moment in time. So I'd love to volunteer you to create an FAQ that can live on this page as well, because I think that the sooner we get it out there leading up to town meeting, the better, because people will have a chance to read. And I don't know how many people are going to watch this 30-minute tour of the public safety facility video that was made last April. But they might read a 2-page, 3-page FAQ.
Thank you. David?
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask that we get updates on the project monthly or so. I think this is going to be pretty fast moving between now and town meeting. The financing model is going to change. Other things are going to change. We're going to get the costing in. And I think it's important that we stay abreast of that. So it doesn't have to be as long as this one, but maybe 10 or 15 minutes a month.
I think it's going to be on the agenda from now moving forward, just updates. Thank you, Dean. Is our review draft policy for town council use for town meeting citizen petition articles. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure how members want to proceed with this. I turned what we said last time, or what we discussed last time, into a draft policy. I'm happy to read it. I'm happy to take comments from members, and I'll take notes on those comments, whatever you and folks would like to do.
I think we can dive in. Are you going to share a screen, or I was thinking you were going to share a screen.
I'm happy. I could do that. I would want to leave the space for me to take notes on what people say.
Okay. Are you going to read it, or?
I'm really sorry. I didn't.
No.
I thought I wasn't looking up. I thought you were just telling people.
No,
to
I was
dive in.
wondering.
So I will share it just quickly and read it, and then I'll put it down, and so that I can take notes. 1 second. So this is the draft policy, and it's not very long, it's just 1 page, and I'll read it. Whereas citizens petitions are important means for Acton voters to express their opinions and ask for consideration, and whereas it's important for all petitioners to be treated in the same way and operate under the same rules, and whereas it is a conflict of interest for town council as the attorney for the select board and town manager to assist a voter with development of a petition that may be in conflict with select board goals or about which the select board does not agree. And whereas each annual town meeting typically has several citizens petitions and legal assistance developing each would be expensive. Therefore, it is the policy of the select board that in order to inform the select board and town meeting members that the town council will review each citizen's petition after it is certified by the clerk. Town council's opinion on the effect of the petition, should it pass, will be presented to the select board and made available to town meeting members. Second is, before certification by the clerk, town council will not provide advice and assistance to a voter about wording or other development of a citizen's petition without an authorizing vote by the select board. Third, nothing in this policy is intended to inhibit the town manager and select board members from individually providing informal guidance to voters who are considering submission of a citizen's petition. And finally, the select board will update and make available a written guide for voters who are considering submission of a citizen's petition.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or? Jim?
I think this accurately reflects our conversations. And I guess I wanted to acknowledge again that it was because I misunderstood the general intent of the board and, it did things that would not have fit into this policy that helped us identify the need for having this policy. So I'm glad to have been helpful.
Dean?
Yeah, I think the policy as drafted looks very good to me. I think it covers the situation. I know there was concerns raised that, we don't want to insert ourselves, the citizens petition is for citizens. And the select board and town manager and town council should not insert themselves into crafting these things or trying to direct the operation. It should be totally independent, and I think that this policy appears to guarantee that.
Thank you. Alyssa?
I agree with that it reflects the board's discussion and that it accomplishes what we want. But I do have a couple of little nitpicky suggestions. I didn't write down which paragraph this is, but it's the whereas it is a conflict of interest for town council. I think conflict of interest is generally understood as financial, and it makes it seem like it's a conflict for town council, when I think that what is meant by it is that it's a conflict for us. So I would suggest changing it to remove the conflict of interest and just say, whereas in the case a citizen petition is in conflict with select board goals or about which the select board does not agree, it would not be in the interest of the select board to have town council, the attorney for the select board, and town manager to aid in the development of such a petition. And then I do really appreciate the third and fourth bullets, because I think those are really important inclusions, but I'm not sure that we need the first one, and I don't quite understand. You're suggesting that town council will review each citizen petition, which to me means every single one. We're sort of guaranteeing a review, and I think that we wouldn't necessarily do that unless we thought that there was, because sometimes they're just, we ask town meeting to support this ideological stance, or want the, town meeting to support studying something. And also, I hope that the board and town meeting would know the effect of a petition if it passes, before we vote on it. But it says that the review and the effect will be available for us only if it passes, but wouldn't we want to know what the effect is ahead of the vote?
So what I wrote here was our convention before the policy. It was not a policy. But what it says is that after each petition is certified by the clerk, meaning it's going into
Yep.
the warrant, then council tells us what it means. And that's quite important, because otherwise people in town meeting, and we, don't know what it means. So
So can you say, should it be certified instead of should it pass? Because when I
Did I-
read pass, I thought that meant pass at town meeting.
Oh, so I understand what that means. So it's the effect of this petition if it passes,
Oh,
right?
okay,
So
okay.
I'll give an example. There have been bylaws in the past that have been poorly written. And town council said, well, it wouldn't actually stop what they're trying to stop because it's not written properly. And so if it passes, it's going to do this, but not what you thought it was going to do. And it's important that we all know that.
All right,
So
now I understand that. I just, the
should
way
I
I read it, I thought you meant that we were going to get that information from town council, the effect, if it passes at town meeting. So just adding something that clarifies when that when that is going to be made available to us. That's all.
Yeah, so the intent is that it's available to town meeting members before the meeting, so that they know what they're voting on, and us. Okay, thank you.
And thank you for drafting this.
Dean?
Yeah, I'd like to address that question about conflict of interest. I think there could be, financial implications for the attorneys. I think it's, from a Machiavellian point of view, town council could say, oh, we think this is a great bylaw. We think this, and assist in the writing of a citizen's petition that could end up resulting in huge amounts of litigation, which then the attorneys, and our attorneys wouldn't do this, but I'm sure there are some out there that would, then would end up guaranteeing themselves a huge amount of billable hours trying to straighten out the mess that they assisted in writing. So I think there could be a serious financial conflict of interest with, an unscrupulous attorney dealing with both sides of the bench.
David?
But I think that's covered by conflicts. I mean, I'm sensitive to what Alyssa said. Conflict of interest has a specific meaning in Massachusetts law, and you're right, it could be, but there are also a lot of other potential conflicts. I actually know that counsel has had difficulty in some situations where she's been asked to do these things, assisting someone, and okay, where are her, is she assisting someone in full faith? Because usually she's working with at least one member of the board, or she, trying to get them. It's not. She's not acting as their attorney properly. She usually tells them that like 18 times, but it's a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
So I understand that it could be, but the way it's written now says it is a conflict of interest. And in the situation where there is a financial conflict of interest, we protect ourselves from that by not permitting a town council review in preparation of a petition. It only happens on our request and after it's certified.
Jim?
I had a partial answer to a concern that you raised, Alyssa, about the amount of time that it takes the town attorney to do these things. So I've I've seen her do this in real time, and she can like quickly figure out that it's a non-binding petition and just say, you know, there's no binding impact of this, you know. It doesn't force us to do anything. And she's really good at saying that pretty quickly. So it's more the bylaws, it's more the articles that look like, that are bylaws or, you know, actual changes that, and those are more rare. Yeah.
I think we do have a call-in user. Yeah. Call-in user, if you would like to add, state your name.
Hi, this is Tara Frederick calling, and thank you for letting me speak. And thank you for the draft. What seems to be missing in all this, and I'm not asking for any specific changes, although I think that I agree with Alyssa regarding it could be a conflict of interest rather than it is, because you don't know for sure until town meeting decides whether the wording is in the interest of the town. But what seems to be missing in the conversation, maybe you can have this at a later date and discuss this, but it's sort of like the idea of democracy and the allocation of public resources, that a citizen's petition is the whole point of it constitutionally, and it doesn't mention that we have a right to petition the state of Massachusetts, but the idea of having to gain a select board vote, so a political approval, before access to what's supposed to be a public resource, kind of weaponizes that public resource, because then after it's certified, a petition is certified, town council can say, well, this petition is just too dangerous for the town. So now you make it basically impossible for it to pass at town meeting, when the whole point of a petition is to give it a fair hearing. So I would be very careful about that, maybe in a future discussion. So I'm personally, I've done a lot of petitions, and I've only asked for review by town council for any suggested changes that would reduce the risk to the town should it pass. So my reviews of petitions have been, as Jim says, very quick. She suggests putting a comma here for clarity, you know. So I hope that you continue this conversation and separate out different types of petitions. So, for example, distinguish between the easy review and the difficult review. Distinguish between constructing. There are folks that have gotten town council to actually construct or major rewrites. I think that that's very different than what I've done in the past, for example. Also, leave enough time so that new signatures can be collected after town council review. I think that it's important to avoid having the appearance that town council was used to beat the petition, when the whole point of the petition is to allow citizens to change government. Thank you very much for this conversation. I really appreciate your time and energy relative to it, because I felt like it was a little bit unfair. There's been a couple of petitions that have gotten a lot of town council time, and I personally have gone out and gotten that review myself from other attorneys, and the review that I've asked for has only been to reduce the risk to the town on clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean?
Yeah, I'd just like to react to that point. When the caller was talking about access to public resource. Town council is a public resource. Town council is paid for by the taxpayers of Acton. Town council is hired by the select board. Town council is our employee. The select board, as the elected representatives, have to make these determinations as to what are worthwhile efforts to put money and town council time into. So I think that we're doing exactly that. We're properly managing public resource, which we have been charged with by virtue of being elected. Thank you.
Any other comment? David?
I would go further and say that, town council is not a public resource. She's paid for publicly, but she's the attorney for the select board and the town manager. And so it's, she, as Dean says, is contracted to by the town to represent us as the executive branch of town government. And our, the citizens of Acton don't always agree, right? That kind of implies that everybody thinks one way and everybody doesn't think one way. And it's if you're actually drafting a bylaw and the people who do the amendments, we have 5 questions on the state ballot this year. They put in considerable attorney time to craft those and those citizens petitions at the state ballot level.
Jim?
I think what's missing from the policy, and I think it's fine that it's missing, is an agreement or a discussion about how those conversations might go if a select board member comes to the rest of the select board and says, this person talked to me about this citizen's petition, and for the following reasons, I think it should have some council review even before it gets certified. So I guess we don't know how those conversations are going to go. I think we have a sense that, it shouldn't be a frivolous thing. It shouldn't be done lightly. It should be done when there's, when we can see a specific need for it. But I think that's going to be a very, item at a time decision. So I think it'll be fine to have those conversations about specific things, and we'll learn from each other, how we vote on those particular questions.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Sorry, I also have something to say. I think I just heard you say it's not in here, but is that what you said?
Oh, what I said, what is in here is that the select board could decide to spend town council money on a petition before it got certified. But that's a decision that the board would make. What it doesn't have is what criteria we will use to determine that.
Oh,
And that's
okay.
fine. I think we'll discover that piece by piece.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I also want to just respond to the comment that we will be providing this to folks who write citizens petitions in a review of what the effect is going to be on the town should it pass at town meeting. But also the risk that we would face were town council to review a petition before signatures are collected would be incredible. It would be enormous, because then you would have citizens going out and collecting signatures saying, town council has approved this, possibly. So that would be something that I don't think any of us should be in favor of. So I think that this policy, provides a service. It's potentially available before, if one of us has a conversation and brings it to the board and we authorize, and then there's that review following certification. So I think this does what it needs to do for everybody involved.
David?
So if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, I can make the revision suggested, and maybe if people don't anticipate further comment, we can just put it in consent for a future meeting.
That sounds great.
And
Yep.
pass it. And Alyssa, if you could make sure the exact wording of what you suggested is in the minutes, so that I can refer to it. Thank you.
Thank you for drafting that, David. So onward to our last item, but not least, the review of the fiscal year 25 revenue updates and discuss Acton Leadership Group meeting.
Thank you. for this discussion, I prepared a couple slides just to review with the board, and it'll help, if there's any questions, we can refer back to them. So if you would just let me share this. Share. So, there are several processes that we do inside Town Hall throughout the budget process and throughout the year. And in the process of doing one this year, we identified something that needed to be addressed. And I think at the same time, I thought it was a good opportunity for me to highlight some of the revenue projections that we're looking at and how they need to be adjusted. So the good news is something that I've already mentioned, that at the end of fiscal year 24, which just ended in June, or at the end of June rather, we brought in 1.7 million more than we budgeted for revenue. That's a lot. I think that, we try to be conservative with our targets, and I'll show you more later how this year it came in so much higher because of the way that there was a little bit of a rebound after the pandemic. But the primary reasons for this very strong revenue number is motor vehicle excise tax, and then the investment market changed, so the investment income was more than we had been projecting for several years. And so as a result of this, we're making some changes to FY25, which I want to talk to you about tonight, but we're also talking about changes to FY26, which we'll talk with the ALG, which we have on Wednesday morning. So during the tax recap process, every year we adjust revenue estimates. And this year, due to an oversight, we understood and found out that we did not appropriate the full amount of revenue from free cash that the ALG plan said that we should have. So normally that would seem to be a big problem, but it's not an issue here other than looking at our revenues and changing them. I wanted to call attention to this because the ALG plan is a consensus document and it uses revenue estimates that people agree to. And when those don't get implemented, we need to be able to explain to the ALG Wednesday morning, but also to you why that happened and how it happened. And so I wanted to just walk you through what happened. So as I mentioned, when we're doing the work that goes into revenue estimating, we finalize our estimates before town meeting. We finalize them probably March, April, or if it's really a difficult year, the end of April. But usually we're finalizing our budget estimates for revenue before town meeting. Then town meeting approves things. And then sometime after that, usually in July, the state finalizes their budget and we know what the revenue will be from that. And then towards the end of the summer, we figure out exactly what we brought in for revenue that year because it's not known before then. Then we start the recap process, which is what we're doing right now. And as part of that, we look at the different revenue that was brought in and ways that it needs to be rebalanced. So just to walk back exactly what happened at town meeting, the ALG plan had asked for free cash use to be $2,065,000. But in the town meeting warrant, if you look through the warrant, and what was actually appropriated was actually only 1.589. That number is exactly what we used in capital. In Article 5 and Article 6, we used 1.589 million, which is how we typically like to do things. Last year, though, ALG wanted us to use more in reserves, and so that was what was projected to happen. It did not happen. And so there was a $475,000 difference between what was in the ALG plan and what was actually appropriated. And so that needs to be reconciled in the tax recap process, which is what we're doing right now. So as I mentioned, state aid came in after town meeting. We had been projecting it to be level. It ended up being $39,000 more than that. So that was one adjustment that we made to help with that $475,000 delta. The second and the largest change that we're making is in local receipts. As I mentioned, we brought in a very large amount of local receipts more than projected, so we're very comfortable with increasing what we're planning to use in FY '25 by $435,000. And then the ALG plan had a net position of positive 676, and that had to be adjusted to zero for the recap too. That happens every year. An important thing to note is that the $435,000 that we're saying that we're going to increase local receipts is what we have right now. But once we certify new growth later this winter, we're going to have to automatically change that because you have to count new growth first. Again, that's kind of inside municipal finance world, but I'm trying to put it all on this slide so you can digest it and you can ask questions about it later or tomorrow or whenever. So the reason that we're able to absorb that issue with local revenues is because of the way that we had a strong year. And I just wanted to give a framework. Local receipts are about 5% of what we budget for revenues every year. As you can see, most of it is from the tax levy. The big blue section of the pie is local taxes. But in that, so that 5%, we typically will, like last year, if you look at the FY '23 actuals and they came in higher that year. In the FY '24 budget, we had to be conservative because you never know what's going to happen when you're planning that early. And then we were also conservative by level funding it in the '25 managed budget. Through the ALG process, we actually increased that to $5.75 million. Again, still pretty conservative because if you look at the trends in local receipts, this is smaller than I thought it was going to be, but basically, local receipts were at $6 million in 2018. The blue is actual. The teal is the left side is teal. It's the estimated. The right side is the actual. So you can see we were at $6 million in 2018, over $6 million in 2019, and then the pandemic, things dropped down under closer to 5, and then even further down below in 21. So we had to really reassess how we were estimating those revenues. Fortunately, they rebounded and started working their way back up. And in 22, they're nearly 6 million. 23, they're over 6 million. 24 is actually off this chart. 24 is 7.4 million. So that's significant growth that we're happy to see, but we didn't want to project it until we knew it was really going to happen. So we can now readjust how we do things going forward, and it'll make a difference. I think the largest portion of that growth in '24 is from motor vehicle. And if you walk down that same path of history, it follows very similarly. 18, 19 was on its way up, 20 was on its way down, 22 a little bit, 23 a lot, and then if you look at 24, again, it's off the chart. It's 4.1 million. And so that's good. And we're comfortable projecting something similar to that going forward, or at least a trend in that direction. So that takes us through where we're at. So right now, we're in the recap process. The town accountant is working to submit our free cash for certification later this month, in November, hopefully. If things stay the way that we like them to, the select board will have a tax classification. And then once that's completed, we can send the tax recap sheet to the state. They'll certify the tax rate. New growth is finalized after values are certified. And then we do it all over again next year. So this is a lot of information, but the main point was at the beginning is that we need to make an adjustment in the ALG plan on Wednesday morning, and I want to make sure that the board understands it, first of all, and supports it as well. So the main change we're going to be making is increasing our FY '25 from the 5.75 that was in the ALG plan to 6.185 million. And that will allow us to submit a balanced budget in the tax recap to the state. And then we'll deal with the reserves that we didn't use. That's the silver lining, is that we were supposed to use reserves and we didn't, so that we still have them. So that's a good part of this. So that's a lot. I'm happy to take any questions. And then we can talk more about ALG as well.
Jim, and then Alyssa. Thanks.
John, I don't need the details because I think it's sort of a personnel matter, but it would be great to be reassured that, if it's true, that you understand what went wrong between the ALG spreadsheet and the printed warrant, and that adjustments have been made so that, that will be more carefully checked.
Absolutely, yes. That's something that, it was not something that we typically do, and we try not to appropriate reserves in the operating budget, but in this case, we were supposed to. So we'll certainly check that next year before we move it forward.
Alyssa.
Thank you for this presentation. I think it's great to be really transparent with the public. It's more than a couple of slides, though.
A few repeats.
You should have said several. I have one question about this slide, actually. You said that this adjustment to 0 for the recap has to happen every year. Could you explain to me why that has to happen?
Yeah, so we need to submit to the state basically a budget that balances out to 0. So while the ALG plan had a surplus, as it was published, of $676, and that's fine, when we submit it to the state, it needs to balance out to 0. And so we would have to just reduce that 676 by local receipts.
So where does that 676, it's not 676,000, it's $676. Where does that go?
We still have it. We're just not using it to spend on the budget, in this case.
David.
I can also say that as ALG is finishing its work each year and they make decisions that they want to use this much here and this much there, when all the numbers are added up at the end, they're off a little bit. And that's because ALG deals with pretty general numbers, and being off by 600, and they weren't intended to be exact. So it's not like they were off by mistake. They were just off because that's the nature of things when we finally add up every last thing. But everything added up, every last thing has to be submitted properly to the state. And so each year we fixed the ALG sheet to match what actually happened. So that 676 is just fixing the ALG sheet.
I know I have nothing either. Thank you for the slides, John. David?
Can I make a comment on
Yes,
ALG now?
sure.
So I looked over the model from last time, and it all appears good to me. One thing I would like to advocate for, it's up to you guys because you guys are the attendees, but the thing that I would advocate for is to not use any of the untaxed levy next year. I think ALG was headed in that direction, but I wasn't sure. So in last year's ALG, that ALG felt to use a third of the untaxed levy left over from the override to be conservative / realistic, right? And so they didn't want to say we wouldn't spend any, and when we might. But I believe that this year is an easier year financially than will the next few. And so to me, it's not prudent for us to spend that untaxed levy next year in FY '26, when we might need it more in FY '27 or FY '28. And so I don't, my opinion is that there's no pressing reason for us to spend that, and we should just leave that as untaxed levy. I think it also shows to the public that we are spending the taxpayers' money prudently, right? That the untaxed levy is not burning a hole in our pocket. And I mean, unless something comes up that is not currently in evidence at ALG meetings, where we have a need to use that, I would rather that we leave that. So right now, the untaxed levy shows is being reduced from 1.2 million to 800,000, implying that we would spend 400,000. I would rather have the untaxed levy set at 1.2 million, basically holding it in reserve for a future year where we might need it more.
Jim?
I'm almost entirely in support of that, and definitely keeping it, starting with the assumption that it's going to be, not using it until we get more into the, the particular struggles of an actual budget. The struggle I'm thinking of, which we haven't had a chance to talk yet as a board, but I'll just sort of preview a topic, which is, which I'll put it on an agenda as soon as I can, is in this year, our ARPA money stops working. It's all going to have been committed by the end of the year. And among those ARPA spendings were some really important social support monies for childcare, rent support, a couple of other things. Now, these are not big numbers, 30, 40,000 each, but it's real money. And that would be one of the few things that would make me think, oh, we should use some of that untaxed levy if we have to. But I'm certainly fine with the notion of going in with let's see what we can do if we hold the line there because like you said, it's not going to get any easier over the next few years.
Any more comments? Dean?
Yeah, I think Jim raises some good points that we're probably going to have to discuss and have a longer discussion about those with the town manager as he works his way into the budget. Obviously one of the justifications for those allocations of ARPA money was because of the impacts of the COVID pandemic, which appears to have subsided, and it's a non-issue now. And the federal government and the state government isn't coming up with additional money because they don't see that there's an impact there. So I guess my entering into this discussion, I'd have to say, well, if that was supposed to be a short-term program to deal with a short-term problem and the problem's gone away, do we really need to continue that program? I'm sure we can have a long and interesting discussion about that, but I mean, that's, from a fiscal conservative point of view, I'm in line with you gentlemen as well, that, let's not touch that untaxed capacity, untaxed levy. But I do think that, the town manager should be aware when he starts crafting a budget that, when you start going down the road of institutionalizing these, what were supposed to be short-term social programs, we need to have a big discussion as to whether those are going to be incorporated forever. Thank you.
David?
I'll second or third the notion that we need to discuss those, right? I think there are a couple of things. I would love it, Madam Chair, if, I don't know how it works with whether we want to ask John to come up with a list of things that he thinks are important, or we somehow do this, have suggestions of what we think are critical programs. Most of these, as Dean says, were pilot programs where we knew that they were short-term, or we had the possibility of doing this and we had people in need. Some of them, I think now is the time after the pilot where we either institutionalize them or not, right? And we should, that definitely needs to be a discussion. I don't think we should have an assumption either way. Some things, like we got $40,000 more in state aid than we thought. Maybe it's reasonable to use about $40,000 for one of these programs. I don't know what the answers are, but I think we definitely need to decide whether we want to ask the town manager to put them in the budget on an ongoing basis and ask him what his recommendations might be.
Thank you for that. That's a great idea.
I just wanted to let the ALG reps know that I'm also in favor of not spending the additional, not including in the budget the additional untaxed levy for next year. I think that's, as David mentioned, showing the taxpayers that we're good stewards. I also think that it would be wise for us to have a discussion of those pilot programs and whether or not to institutionalize them, but I think that that should be sort of separate from the question of whether or not to use the untaxed levy, because the override had nothing to do with those pilot programs. And they weren't, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on 17 Woodbury Lane from ARPA, so they weren't all transportation, bistro cafe, child care subsidy. So I think that there are opportunities that I'm confident our town staff will find for state and federal funding to continue some of those very, very beneficial social programs, because many of them were not related to the pandemic. They're just related to aging or being a single parent or not having access to a vehicle or a driver's license. And it's great that those people can live in our community. This community, sorry.
Would that be something that you would, could do, John, is maybe come up with a list of social, just things we've dedicated ARPA money toward? And
Absolutely. I mean, this has been a multi-year process, and the
Yeah.
board has been involved every year in terms of, first of all, approving things and then reallocating things. And I'm going to come back to you again in a few weeks to ask again, because as I said before, we're on a mission to make sure that's all spent. But in the end of all that, and some of these projects will go on for another year or two, and at some point in that period, I certainly would be providing some type of summary of what happened, all the great things we did with it, first of all. And then I think probably included in that would be things that we'd recommend doing further. Whether we do it for the budget process that's about to start, that would be better. So we'll try to do that.
Any online comments? People in the public?
No one with their hand raised, Madam
Great.
Chair.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.